I would like to start again with the intervention logic, which I presented also in general yesterday already. So the intervention logic means the whole story behind your project, starting from actually first the problem or the challenges which you have identified in your area, and then as a final vision or final result, then to think about what you want to change. So which results you would like to deliver at the very end of the project. And I think these 2 points, the one at the beginning and the one at the very end, they are the most crucial ones. Because when you know which problem you want to address and what you want to achieve, then I think it's not so much difficult anymore to somehow to plan which steps in between are needed, which activities are needed. So this is why we always say also just really make up your mind starting from the end. Just to have a clear vision in mind, how should the situation look like at the very end? Just to also somehow visualize how the picture should be in an ideal situation, what should be changed at the end. And then in between, of course, you need to define the specific objective of the project, and then to break it down into the single activities and outputs you need to perform in order to achieve what you have planned, and then also to think which are the target groups, which are the key stakeholders which you need to involve. And I think this is in a very nutshell what you need to think about when you when you define the work plan. And of course, there is one precondition that this intervention logic which you are building, it needs to be, of course, also in line with the program objectives. Because, and I think this is clear anyway, that we cannot fund at the program level anything which is not in line with the objectives of the program as such. Then, just also in a very short and concise way, the key principles which apply to any work plan in any topic. And first, it is a work plan, it has to be consistent, which means it has to show that all the activities, everything what you plan in the work plan needs to directly be linked and to lead to the objectives which you have defined. So this means that, I don't know, if you foresee some activities which are somehow maybe nice to have, but they do not really contribute to what you defined as an objective, they cannot be funded. So they really need to be directly linked to your project objectives and results. Another principle is a work plan needs to be transparent. So it means it has to really clearly show also the workflow, the activities which you perform. And of course, you need also to provide the necessary level of detail. So it's not enough just to define in a very blurry or vague way, and we want to do this, and we have a very general activity, and this will be maybe the outcome. This is, of course, not enough. So you really need to be clear also in the different steps which are needed to lead to the outputs and to the objectives which you have defined. Of course, it needs to be logic, also in terms of time sequencing, so that one activity clearly builds on the other, that you have also time-wise the necessary structure and logic within the work plan. It should be concrete, also in terms of which target groups you plan to involve, which, I don't know, if you need, for instance, to involve SMEs, if you need to involve policymakers, if you want to work on the policy level, I think in many cases it's self-explanatory anyway which target groups you need in order to get to the objectives which you have defined. But you have to also describe it in the necessary level and to clearly demonstrate also in the activities that you want to involve these type of stakeholders. And of course, results, they have also to be sustainable. So they should not be just a one-off activity. Sometimes we see also maybe trainings which are just a single activity without any potential to be sustained, or maybe also some tools which are nicely developed and nobody will be further using them. So this is also a very clear precondition that project results, outputs, they have to be also maintained, further be used, transferred to other stakeholders. And this needs to be clearly visible from the work plan. Again, this is a nice pyramid. I have shown you a pyramid also yesterday. This is a little bit a different format, and it also visualizes, again, the intervention logic. And what I want to stress here is actually that you can see this pyramid from two different perspectives. When you define and plan your work plan now in the application form, actually you should see it from the perspective when you start from the result, because this is the planning perspective. So defining the result and then planning backwards. So this means from the result to go through the objective, then to define the outputs, and then to see the activities and deliverables which are necessary. But of course, if you're successful and your project is approved, then the perspective changes. Then, of course, you start with single activities and deliverables, so this means from the bottom of the pyramid, and then you further proceed and continue with developing, implementing the outputs, and then to reach the objective, and then finally to come to the result. And I think this is quite also an interesting aspect to be kept in mind, these two different types of views. In this chart, you see already also the key terminology which we are using in the work plan, which is activities, deliverables, outputs, and objectives and results. And sometimes it might not be so clear what is a deliverable, what is an output. Nevertheless, we have clear definitions in our program manual. So if you have read through the documents, you might have noticed that there are these definitions, but maybe just to explain very quickly, outputs are actually the main outcomes, the products of a work package. So this is actually the main, whatever thing which is the final point of a thematic work package. And deliverables are actually the steps of the single activities leading then to the final output. And this means a work package must have as a minimum one output, and deliverables could have several deliverables, but this I show you afterwards in a second then also. And these deliverables, they should reflect single steps of developing an output, depending also how comprehensive this output you want to develop is. I just mentioned work packages. Most of you who have already started preparing the application form might be very familiar with the fact that we have 4 different types of work packages foreseen in the application form, plus an extra investment specification. And these are namely the preparation work package, where there is basically nothing to describe. This is just a formal issue, since this is linked to the fact that you can request a lump sum in case you're successful with your application. Then there is the management work package, which deals with all the management and coordination activities. And there, actually, at program level, we have defined 4 types of management activities. The main content, core content part lies within the thematic work packages. There you have the possibility to define yourself up to 4 thematic work packages. And those are actually the work packages which are developing the outputs. This means for each of the thematic work packages, you have to foresee at minimum one output. Last but not least, there is the communication work package. My colleague Frank will tell you some information on specifically what is expected to be within the communication work package and how this differentiates also with potential communication activities which need to be foreseen within the thematic work packages. And last but not least, there is also the possibility to have investment specifications, and this actually applies for investments which are larger than 15,000 euro. So in case you foresee some smaller investments, they need actually to be included in the thematic work package, and only larger investments, for those you need to define a separate investment specification, which requires more comprehensive information in terms of breakdown, in terms of technical details, in terms of location, preparatory activities, etc. I have spoken a lot already about outputs, and in this respect, the program foresees actually a typology of outputs. So this means we would like you to categorize the main outputs which you develop within the following 4 or 5 categories. So these are actually strategies and action plans. So this is mostly related to policy-related outputs. There are tools which can be different types of whatever. It could be IT tools, it could be services, so there are different types of tools. You have also the definitions within the manual, what is to be regarded, for instance, as a tool. Pilot actions, so this is something, pilot actions, they need to be testing, they need to be demonstration of, for instance, newly developed tools in order to gain some practical experience, which then could be further transferred and deployed, and then also trainings. A 5th output type of innovation networks is just applicable to the specific objective 1.1, since this deals specifically with building the linkages between innovation system actors, which is to be regarded under this specific output type of innovation networks. I would like to come back here in this slide with the structure of thematic work package, which actually shows the process of development. Before actually you define activities and deliverables within a thematic work package, my advice is always just think about first or try to draft a summary of the work package. Because in this summary, you're actually supposed to think and to develop the story of the work package, which means you need to think about what do you want to achieve in the work package and what you need to do in the work package. And then based on the summary, I think it's the much easier exercise than to break it down into the single activities and deliverables which actually lead to the output. So this means, again, a work package consists of the main output as an outcome, and then broken down into single activities, and as intermediary steps, the necessary deliverables, which then are necessary to achieve the output. Actually, we aimed to put together a few practical experiences or hints which we saw as also learnings from the results of the first call. And I think this might be also helpful for you to think about, or maybe to improve or to take special attention on these points. Actually, the first recommendation or the first learning which we saw, which is related to the more strategic aspects of a project, is that objectives, they were in some cases not really very clear. And there we had actually mostly, I think it was mostly evident in innovation projects, that projects, they were rather vague or blurry in terms of what projects they really wanted to achieve. What should be the change of the initial situation? So this goes back to what I tried to explain to you at the very beginning, that you have to be very clear in which change you would like to achieve by implementing the project. Another aspect which was in many cases not so well described is the novelty, or how innovative is the approach you want to take. This is particularly important also since this is actually a crucial aspect also which was emphasized by our member states, by the monitoring committee, that the aim is really to fund approaches which are new, which are not repeating the same things which are already there in the regions. So not to repeat projects or maybe just slightly adapt something which is already there on the ground. And in this respect, we see also in many application forms not enough information on what is really the novelty of the approach, how the project wants to build on results which are already there. Just say, some projects, they just say, we will build on available results. But they do not explain how, and they do not specify exactly which results they will be further developing and implementing. And another very strategic aspect, since we are a transnational cooperation program, in some cases it's also not so clear why there is really the need for a transnational cooperation approach. It's of course, in many cases, it's nicely described that there will be some mutual learning, that there will be a nice exchange of experience, but there is not more substance in the proposal. And there we really expect that there is more clear information on why is it really necessary to work together, or why this cannot be just done at the regional or national level alone. Why do you really need to cooperate with, in average, 10 other project partners? And this lack, in many cases, of this transnational added value becomes most evident then also in pilot actions and investments. And there we advise you to be very careful, for instance, when defining a pilot investment in a certain place, why is it really needed also for the other partners? Why is there a benefit also if you have whatever an investment which is done maybe in Zagreb? Why is this investment then also of interest and of benefit for a partner coming from Berlin, for instance? And this has to be very clearly explained in the application form, because otherwise we have also some projects where this is very much clearly just the interest of one single project partner who wants to have financed, I don't know, a specific whatever site or the rehabilitation of a specific contaminated site, and it is not clearly linked to the situation or to the other activities which are foreseen in the project. The next hints, they deal a bit more with the work plan. And first is that some outputs, they remain also too vague and too general. So for instance, we see a lot of times that there are some tools developed, but it's not clear which type of tool. Is it an IT tool? Is it a physical tool? Is it a measurement tool? Is it a service? And there we expect to have really clear information. What type of tool, for instance, is this? Which characteristics does it have? Who should be using it? How will it be sustained, etc.? So this is a crucial element as well. I spoke already about investments and pilot actions, about maybe in some cases the lack of transnationality. And another thing is that it's, in some cases, it's also not so much clear why do we need this investment to reach the project objectives? We have sometimes the impression that this is just mostly, of course, the interest, as I said before, of a single project partner. But does it lead or does it help to reach the project objectives of the whole project? In some cases not. And of course, this is then also assessed as a negative point if this is not the case. And overall, we see also sometimes that the work plan is not elaborated in the necessary level of detail. So this means that there might be some activities for which a lot of budget is foreseen, and there is not enough information on what are the single deliverables of an activity. There is not enough level of detail, how this is done, by which partners this will be implemented, and etc. Following on this, the work plan, as I said before, also on my more general explanations on the work plan, it has to be transparent, it has to be clear, and it has to clearly show the way to the outputs. And this sometimes you do not really see how the workflow will be organized, how the sequencing of the different steps is being done. And this is something which, of course, is then the basis, since without a good work plan, actually you cannot implement a good project. Because if you have not defined the necessary steps, how should you then in future really to bring it to the ground if you're not clear in what you want to do? The last point relates then mostly also to what Frank was saying on communication. So this is actually linked both to sustainability and transfer of results. In many cases, we only see very general information on sustainability, which just says, for instance, we will just maintain this output for a few years and we'll make sure that this is used, but it's not clear how, and it's not clear by whom it will be used. And for this, it's not enough just to provide some general information in the text boxes, but it should be also clearly integrated within the work plan in the form of activities. So as was mentioned also before, for instance, it's always a good solution to foresee dedicated activities for stakeholder involvement. That you say we foresee a stakeholder process, and then you plan which are the activities. Do I need to have some meetings? Do I need to have maybe a panel of stakeholders who will be involved? Maybe they could be also involved in doing some reviews. There are various solutions how to do. But you need to think about it, you need to think what is the best way, how to do it, and then to clearly also show and integrate it in the work plan. And last but not least, but this is more a technical issue, we also asked for target values for the involvement of target groups and for result indicators. And in many cases, we see that they are either too ambitious, that they are very, very high, and we always ask ourselves how this should be realistically reached. But we also see the other extreme, that they are rather moderate and too low. And in this regard, we always just emphasize, think about what is realistic, and it should be, of course, a little bit ambitious, because we try to reach also high objectives, and we want to be, of course, successful at the very end, but they should be based on sound assumptions. So it should not be just pure fantasy figures, but you need to think about what are the underlying facts, how do I want to do it, and what can I do? Because these are actually the values against which you will be measured at the very end. And you have to report also on them in your progress reports and in your final reports. And if you do not manage to reach them, then you have to justify. And this is why we really recommend to spend some thoughts also on what is realistic to be reached and how. Last but not least, since we were asked already also some questions before on the online submission system, EMS, and here we want to give some practical hints also. First, you should start prepare the work plan early enough, not only in terms of EMS, but overall, since this is, of course, a crucial point in order just to be ready in time. And as a first point, you should start from a technical point of view, planning or defining the start and end date in EMS before you start working on the work plan in EMS. Because this is an important technical issue, because based on the start and end date, there will be also the definition of the periods, and this, if you change this later on, this might have an impact and confuse the end dates or delivery dates of outputs which you have already defined and also on the budget. So this means define first start and end date, and then you can continue to work on the rest of the work plan. Another important thing is you should finalize the work plan in EMS first before you start working on the budget. So, and this Helga will also explain afterwards, and I think this will also be explained in detail in the budget, in the financial workshops, since if you change something afterwards, there are many interlinkages within the online submission system, and this could cause some troubles. So this means if you want to prepare budget figures before, we rather recommend to do it outside of EMS first, and first finish the work plan in EMS and then include budget figures in EMS. What, of course, is also necessary, but this is formal requirements, please make sure that you do not forget to upload in the section annexes of EMS all the obligatory documents, which means lead partner and partner declarations, which have to be signed. They have to be uploaded just as scan of the signed documents. And in case of private lead partners, there are some additional documents which are required. But these requirements, in case of a private lead partner, please have a detailed look also to the manual, which exactly documents like balance sheets, etc., are required. What we also advise is there is a function of automatic checks in EMS. We advise to just time by time, just to click on this automatic check button, because there are some underlying checks being done in order to ensure consistency of data, in order to ensure that all the necessary information is filled in. Because we have also experienced that if some projects, they do it only at the very end, you might get several error messages, and then you might have also a time problem to solve all of them if you are doing this in a very tight way to the deadline. So it's better just to frequently check and press on this button before, otherwise it might cause problems at the very end. And last but not least, we always recommend also to save frequently your inserted data. Just do not forget just to press the save button, because if you switch, for instance, between different sections of the EMS, it could be that you lose data. So it's always better to press the save button one more time than maybe one time less, in order to be on the safe side, not to lose any important information that you would then need to insert again that data which maybe got lost.